Hi everyone, today we're continuing chapter 1, when habitats change. Lesson 2 is talking about the different habitats, okay? So, as you can see here, we have 4 habitats today, okay? We have the rainforest habitat, polar habitat, wetland habitat, and grassland habitat. We're going to talk about each one of them, the weather, plants, and animals there, okay? Let's start with the polar habitat. Where can we find it? We will find it at the north and the south pole of the earth. As you can see here in the picture, you will find the north pole and the south pole, okay? The edges, they're not the edges, okay? The upper and the lower part of the earth. These two, we call them poles. So the upper one is the north, the lower one is the south. So the polar habitat, you can find it at these two, okay? Now let's talk about weather, animals, and plants. The weather there is cold and windy. It's cold all the time because there is ice, okay? So the weather is cold and windy. The land is covered with ice, okay? Now the plants. When you see a cartoon or a movie about the polar habitat or any place with ice, do you see a large trees and all these things? No, we can see small trees. These small trees, we call them shrubs, okay? Shrubs. Also, you can see that in cartoons. The rocks, sometimes you can find it's covered with green things, green plants. These green plants that cover the rocks, we call them moss, okay? So the plants there, we have shrubs, the small trees, and we have the moss that cover the rocks, okay? What about the animals? We have, for example, there are different other animals, but these are examples. We have the polar bear, we have whales, penguins, and Arctic fox. The penguins, they sleep on ice, okay? Can we have penguins here in Egypt? We can't, because that's not their habitat. They need a cold place, and here in Egypt, we don't have ice. So these animals, they live only in this place, in the polar habitat. They can't change it, okay? So the next habitat is the rainforest habitat. The rainforest habitat, it's like the movie Tarzan, okay? So where can we find it? We will find it near the equator. And what's the equator? The equator is the middle of the earth, as you can see here, okay? Most of the rainforest habitats, you find it in Africa, South America, and a little of Asia, okay? So now we're going to talk about weather, plants, and animals there. What's the weather there? It's raining every day. Almost every day there is rain, okay? Most of the year, the 12 months, there is rain. And the weather there is warm. It's not cold, it's warm. It's sunny all the time, okay? With rains. If you remember the cartoon, you can see that there were large trees, tall trees, and with big leaves, okay? So the plants there, they are tall trees, very large, with large leaves, okay? If you remember that. What about the animals? The animals there, for example, we have macaw, monkey, frog, and large snakes. All these animals live there. Macaw and monkeys, they live in trees, okay? The frogs, they live in the rainforest because they have to have a wet skin. Their skin has to be wet. There has to be water all the time on the frog so they can live, okay? And of course, there is rain there every day, so they will have the wet skin. The large snakes, as cobra and something else called anaconda, these large snakes live there. They crawl, okay? So what's the weather of the rainforest? It's warm, it rains every day. What about plants? They have tall trees and the large leaves, okay? What about the animals? For example, they have macaw, monkeys, frogs, large snakes, gorillas, tigers, okay? So now with the third habitat, we have the grassland habitat. Where can we find it? We will find it all over the world. Most of the continents, most of the countries have the grassland habitat. Okay, it's a dry flatland. Okay, if you remember the cartoon Simba, it's the same habitat, it's the same place. Okay, so what about the plants there? If you can see the picture or remember the cartoon, you will find a few trees. They don't have large or many trees as the rainforest. They have few trees and short. Okay, most of them are shrubs and bushes. Okay, also the grass there is tall. So they have tall grass and few and small trees. Okay, if you can remember, the animals were hiding in the grass because it's tall. Okay, that's the plants there. What about the animals and the weather? The weather, it can be two things. First, the tropical grasslands. What's meant by the tropical grasslands? It's any grassland and the weather there will be warm all year. Okay, if the weather of the grassland is warm all year, we call it tropical grasslands. Okay, but what about if it's warm in the summer and cold in the winter? We call it temperate grassland. So we have two of them. If the weather is warm all year, we call it tropical grassland. If it's warm in the summer, cold in the winter, we call it temperate grassland. Okay, now let's talk about the animals. The animals, as we can see, we have rabbits, lions, prairie dogs, giraffes, tigers, and others. Okay, now with the last habitat, we have wetland habitat. Where can we find the wetlands habitat? Any place that has land and water. Any place with land and water next to each other, we call it wetlands habitat. It forms swamps. Okay, what about the weather, plants and animals there? The weather is warm or cold or have multiple seasons. What does it mean? It means if the wetlands habitat in a cold place, the weather will be cold. If it's in a hot place, the weather will be warm. Okay, if it's in a place there are warm in summer, cold in the winter, they will have the same temperature. They have the same weather. Okay, what about their plants? As you can see here in the picture, we will find the plants, they grow under the water or they float on it. Okay, so what about the animals? The animals that lives there are the animals that can live in the water and on land, both of them. There are some animals can live in the two, in the water and on land, like turtles, crocodiles, and we have frogs. Okay, these are the animals of the wetland habitat. Okay, these are the 4 habitats. Hope you guys understood it. Goodbye.